Are you looking to decide between living in Gainesville and Orlando, Florida? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the exact differences between both, between safety, schools, cost of living, everything that you need to know between choosing Gainesville, Florida and Orlando, Florida, and stay to the very end because you're going to hear some statistics that are separate both that you probably don't know about. Let's go. What's up, everyone? My name is Cameron Hodge. On this channel, I talk about moving to and living in Orlando, Florida, and I absolutely love it. This is what I do every single week, dropping videos for you. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and little bell icon to get notified every time I drop a new video, so that you can be notified how to know the most information possible when it comes to moving to Orlando, Florida. Also, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I love helping you with your real estate decisions. But moving to Orlando, I absolutely love it. This is what I do every single day. This is popping below is how you can get a hold of me, call, text, email, whatever you need to do. Got your back. We're moving to Orlando and here to help you create those plans to make sure it's done the right way and is the least stress to you. All right, getting into the video, obviously Gainesville and Orlando. So I have had clients that have closed homes up in Gainesville, and this is a video that I probably should have done a while ago, but I'm finally getting around to it with the chaos that is life. And I really wanted to break down both different cities. So obviously, if you don't know, Orlando is in Central Florida. You know, the only thing we have here is lakes. We're not on the coast. We're right smack dab in the middle of the state, just about. Gainesville is when you're heading north in Florida, pretty much right, staying central, but heading straight north. If you don't already know, I'm gonna have a map icon pop up while I'm talking right now. But so Gainesville has a lot of charm. People either like it or they hate it, is what I've come to notice. But I have had a client who actually recently has closed up in Gainesville, and like it fit him perfectly. It's exactly what he's looking for. He got to buy his home backed up to a nature preserve, so he had no neighbors behind him, and he is enjoying life immensely. And Gainesville, believe it or not, has actually come up in several of my other videos in the past, and the reason for that is because of the cost of living tends to be a little bit better. Now, it's not substantially better than Orlando, but there are key metrics that are going to be better than that. And some things that actually, I was at the end, like I said before, I'm going to give you a statistic that's actually really surprising that I didn't expect Gainesville to be better than Orlando in, but nonetheless, let's get into it. Okay, so starting with Gainesville. So Gainesville, like I said, we've already talked about where it's located in the state. But why would someone choose to live in Gainesville? What does it have going for it? Well, a lot of times it comes down to cost, or there are certain industries that are going to be a little bit better in Gainesville than Orlando. Obviously, Orlando is very heavy on tourist and service industry. So that's one thing that Orlando is always going to have more than Gainesville. Gainesville is definitely going to be more your staple urban jobs and companies and locations that are there. Obviously, Orlando, when it comes to jobs, depending what you're in, is what, like, let's take any city in Florida. Like, some cities are going to be better when it comes to certain industries. Orlando, tourism, service-based industries, and also it's really trying to be the Silicon Valley of the East Coast immensely. So you see a lot of tech companies starting to look at Orlando, moving to Orlando. So if you're in like anything tech or service or tourism related, Orlando's just going to be the spot, like hands down. But Gainesville, obviously, is going to be any typical job or medical profession or like any job that's going to be stable to an urban environment is going to be found in Gainesville. I really didn't see any major companies that were moving there, but like I said, that changes every single month. So you can always reach out to me if you have questions about like who's moving there, what's going on, because like I said, I have had clients that have closed in Gainesville, and I really do understand the charm of living in Gainesville. But like I said, it's one of those places where people either love it or hate it, but that can be said for any single city. Gainesville, believe it or not, is actually, so going off of niche.com is where I pull a lot of these informations because they do a lot of the study and aggregate information combining, and there's a place you can go for any of this information I'm talking about today. But believe it or not, when you look at niche.com, when they look at the entire United States, this Gainesville is actually rated 32 out of 228 cities that they polled of best cities to live for young professionals. Now, Orlando does rank higher than that slightly, but it's interesting that Gainesville actually even made the list. So, you know, it's something to consider. Obviously, when it comes to best cities to live, Gainesville is rated 69. And like as we get further in this year, kind of understand why. But like I said, Gainesville is one of those things where if you're looking to be close to the coast, or maybe you want to be in Jacksonville, Orlando, or Tampa, or Miami, like you want to be in those major city hubs, I don't think Gainesville would necessarily be for you. It's one of those places where it's still urban. There's still a lot of things going on for it, but it's not going to be like the craziness that you're going to find in like the major cities in Florida. Obviously, Gainesville is no small city, right? Like, it is still a massive thing, and it's starting to grow immensely because a lot of people who maybe can't afford some of the prices in Jacksonville or Orlando, or maybe they just don't want to be in those major cities and hubs, like they are looking at Gainesville. And it's interesting to see that, like, people don't talk about Gainesville much, but I am surprised by how much it has grown compared to a lot of other places in Florida. It's, don't discount it. Like, it's definitely one of those cities that's kind of like still in the middle of the state. Like, you can head to Pensacola, Jacksonville, Orlando. Like, you're still in that location to where like you can still drive to all these places. Or maybe you like going to, I've had some people reach out who they have family in Georgia, and Gainesville is like that couple hour difference to, closer to Georgia and like certain things like that. Now, I will say when it comes to airports, like they might have, small airport that can get you to like a major hub, but you're going to have to be flying to like the Orlando or the Jacksonville to get like a flight to wherever destination you're going. So this is one downfall, to where if you are going to be traveling a lot, maybe that isn't the best destination for you if flights are going to be an option. Because obviously, like, as you know, if you don't know, when it comes to flights, if you're not leaving from a major hub to begin with, you're not going to get the best price and value for the ticket. So you're going to be spending a little bit more if you are going to be flying and things like that. So something to keep in note when it comes to doing that. So overall, cost of living is pretty similar, but there are a couple metrics that are like really, really different and life-changing. So one thing I've noticed is when it comes to food and groceries, it's about the same. I think that can be said for virtually every state. Now, obviously, certain grocers are going to be more expensive. If you shop for coupons and deals, it's a whole different story. But in terms of just general grocery cost, Gainesville and Orlando tend to be neck and neck. When I looked up pricing, it's like when you're going to find like the price of milk and like staples and bread and all that stuff in one city, it's going to be the same in the other one. Like, there's really not too much different. What's available in Orlando for grocers tends to be the same in Gainesville. So I didn't really see any difference when it comes to groceries. Healthcare, believe it or not, tends to be more expensive in Gainesville. Not by much, like a couple percentage points. Like, it's not major. The thing I always implore people when it comes to healthcare is like, look, are you looking just for like, hey, is there a place I can go if there's an emergency, and can I find my health insurance provider in the city? Really, from those two major points, I wouldn't say there's much difference in healthcare. The caveat to that is like, obviously someone who needs specialists for one of their sons, like, you have to make sure that if there is a special needs in the family, that you can find a specialist in that city that you really, really care about. And obviously, like that in Orlando, might not be the ticket for us, but we can also go to Tampa if we really need something major. And we're willing to make that choice when we finally made our settlement here in Orlando. But if you're looking to move between both cities, I do implore you, obviously, when it comes to healthcare, like it's such a one-sided argument that you have to make sure you understand that if you need something special, that's available in that city. Because that's really going to change your healthcare costs completely, right? Like, you have to make sure you understand, is the cost different in the city you're going to? Is it cheaper in Orlando for a certain specialist than Gainesville? Are there certain specialists you need that aren't available in Gainesville? Things like that. So you have to make sure you look into that. Overall, I wouldn't say in the end that it's much difference. Gainesville tends to have slightly higher healthcare costs, but it's so negligible that in the end, I consider it equal out the door. So the biggest metric that we're going to talk about next is housing. Obviously, at the time of recording this video, Orlando and Gainesville have both seen housing drops since rates have started to increase. The thing about that is Gainesville just always averages lower. Like, you can find a cheaper home. When you look at equal size, Gainesville will have those cheaper opportunities by far, which is why a lot of people, I think, are starting to move to Gainesville. Because if you're trying to avoid the Jacksonville and the Orlando, like, you're going to be moving somewhere else, and Tampa's not any cheaper, right? So Gainesville, I think, is on the map for a lot of people. And maybe it could be a stepping point for you into the state of Florida, because it's still not a bad area. It's just, obviously, like, can you still afford where you want to live inside? There are going to be areas that are higher crime, lower crime, good, bad, good for you, bad for someone else. Like, it all comes down to that. But like I said, like, even when I closed, when we had our client up there, like, they still bought a home for like well under $300,000, like well under. And it's a, good 3-bed, 2-bath. They need a little bit of work in TLC, but it's nothing crazy. And in Gainesville, you can still find those opportunities. So, like, if you're looking for somewhere that has the lowest housing cost, but can still give you like a good size home, that American dream, Gainesville could be an option for you. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Right now, the average home price in Orlando is $360,000. It is not cheap for most people that are coming to move to the city. I think that definitely is still a sticker shock. And you have to understand that Orlando is still like, it's an expensive metro. You know, it's always been on the map. Even before COVID and all the crazy migration of people, like Orlando just has always been on the map. It's always been a major city people wanted to move to. And you have to understand that even though pricing has dropped, I mean, it was around like 400,000 at one point before rates went up back in June last year. You know, now we're at 360 as of November, and I'm still waiting to see the numbers for December and see what it is there. I imagine it's going to be about the same or a little bit less. So you have to understand that, yeah, it's going down, but Gainesville just out the door is going to give you that cheaper home price. And hey, look, we all got to make sacrifices, and if that's what you need when it comes to moving here because you want to buy a piece of real estate, Gainesville isn't a bad option. Like, it still gives a lot of opportunity for those that are looking to move to the state of Florida to still get the benefits of living here in the end. Utility costs are about the same. Gainesville seems to average slightly higher utility costs when it looks at electricity, water, trash, all that stuff. It tends to be a little bit higher, not by much, a couple of percentage points higher. Orlando tends to be a little bit cheaper, but I do implore you that Orlando also love HOAs. So if you're looking to avoid HOAs, understand that could dictate your utility cost in Orlando, or maybe if you want to live in an HOA community, that's going to add to the cost. You have to make sure you weigh both those options because it's all going to come down to what house you're buying, the tax rate, you know, everything, right? Insurance on the specific home. Like, it's so variable in the state of Florida that I think the utility costs and like insurance and all that is very negligible. Like, it all comes down to the individual house. You know, has the roof been replaced recently, and like all that stuff that affects like your bottom line insurance costs and utility costs inside, you know, between these two cities. Now, when it comes to transportation costs like gas or public transportation, Gainesville is substantially cheaper by, I mean, it looks like 10 to 20% cheaper depending on what you're trying to do. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean gas is that much cheaper. It's just like, that's like the overall assessment of like public transportation and things like that. Orlando, obviously, it's a tourist city, so it's probably going to be a little more expensive than you expect in like, you know, Gainesville and things like that, or Jacksonville even. So that being said, I'm not surprised Gainesville has cheaper gas. So like I said, the housing is cheaper, the gas is a little bit cheaper. Like, that's why people are moving to Gainesville, I feel like, is because, well, hey, look, it's not a bad area. You can still find good communities and you get a lower price. Look, I help people every single day move to Orlando and I absolutely love it. But I'm not ignorant to the fact that, hey, look, it's just an expensive city for still a lot of people who are looking to move, especially if you don't have much money. So Gainesville could be a great option for a lot of people. But like I said, it is out of the way depending on what you like to do on a daily basis. If you like going to amusement parks or you like going to the coast. I wouldn't say it's like, it's still, you can still drive to the coast, but still, like, depending what you need in your life, Gainesville might not meet that. So you have to understand it's an ebb and flow. Like, there's pros and cons to ever, no matter where you live. Now, crime and safety. Oh man, they're about even. Believe it or not, I'm actually really surprised looking at the numbers again here as I'm talking. They're actually pretty even when it comes to like violent crime or just petty theft or vehicle theft, like everything, the whole breakdown. They're both rated as C on niche.com. So they're both about even, and neither one ranks higher than the other, which is interesting. Like I said before, I think in the last video I did last year regarding Orlando and Tampa, Tampa used to have a better crime rating. It's about a B now. And Orlando in that time, personally, I think a lot of these rates are a little outdated. Orlando has improved when you look on like other websites when it regards to crime, but both are about the same. Now, like I said, when I caveat all that, like people look at Orlando and like, oh my God, and Gainesville, like, oh, it's a C for crime. I'm like, yeah, but you can still find amazing neighborhoods in every city. I mean, New York City, you can live in like the worst slums of all time, but then you can still be living in a high rise. Like it all depends on like your budget, what you can afford, and where you're trying to live. Obviously, like every city is going to have that. Personally, I think most cities are going to have a low crime rate rating. It just is what it is. Like, it's a city, it's a lot of people, more crime, and take that with a grain of salt. But both, when it comes to crime rating, is equal on that measure. Okay, so both cities are in Florida. Which one has better weather? Well, overall, they're about the same. Believe it or not, Orlando actually gets about 15 more sunny days every year than Gainesville. Interesting fact. When it comes to temperature, obviously they're both in Florida. They're both about the same. The average for Gainesville tends to be a little bit lower. So the summer ends up being, it's about the same average for summer heat. But believe it or not, in the winter, it actually ends up being almost 10 degrees colder on average. Like I said, I'm sure this is variable. I'm sure this differs every single year. But it's interesting to see that Gainesville actually has like a 41 degree average January weather, and Orlando is only 48. So if you're trying to avoid that cold weather, like I think most people are in Florida, maybe Orlando's the pick. Maybe you want to avoid those, a little bit colder weather in Gainesville. Now, the one thing that amazed me looking between Gainesville and Orlando is the public schools. Now, if you're like me, you're looking into homeschooling your kids. That's just my preference. There's a lot of cool options in Florida. I'm actually going to be doing a video coming up regarding the public school system, some hybrid options that are available, what private schools are like in Orlando. Like, there's a lot of things I want to bring up because, like, obviously having 3 kids now, it is a huge topic of mine and a huge point of concern I think many of us as parents have. Believe it or not, if you're still looking to put your kid in the public school system, in Orlando, some of the best public schools are about a B+ rated on the national average. But when it comes to Gainesville, you can actually find A-rated public schools. Now, it doesn't mean A-rated schools don't exist in Orlando, because they do. And I think niche.com was a little outdated when it comes to some of this information, because Orlando schools have actually surprised me how many of them have increased. I think when they take this into account, they're looking at the city schools in Orlando, because if you go to the suburbs, you can absolutely find great schools, especially like up in Lake Mary, I think has some high rated public schools and things like that. So we're talking about, when we're looking at school ratings here, we're looking at central city school ratings. Now, Gainesville, when it comes to the city, they have some A-, A+ rated public schools. Orlando, they're only a B+ at best. So it's important to note that if public schools are a huge issue to you, that you understand that, like, if you're looking to live in the center of the cities, that Orlando is a little bit less when it comes to public school ratings. Now, like I said, with every city, you can look on the outskirts, you can look at different areas, but I'm not going to joke to the matter that when you look at central Orlando and Orange County, public schools aren't why people come to Orlando. I'm sorry. I have never actually felt that public schools in Orlando were great, because overall they got lower ratings. But like I said, that's in the center of Orlando. When you start looking at the outskirts, like when you look at Lake Mary, or let's see, when we head north of Orlando just there, you're going to get a lot of schools that are still awesome rated and stuff like that. But like, if you're also like me, Florida is also a state that really leans into homeschooling, or there's a lot of charter schools that are still publicly funded that are great. And there's a lot of things that can kind of differ between both locations. So you really need to understand, like, what are you looking at for school? And obviously, if you're someone who's maybe going to college again or something related to that, like, obviously weighing those options in as well. So that's going to affect your move. But overall, both cities have their pros and cons. Gainesville, it's still an urban suburban feel, but I can tell you that with a client that I had up there, that Gainesville does have opportunity to kind of make you feel like you're more alone, like you're more out there in the country in parts. Orlando, it's going to feel, it's more crazy. It's touristy. There's going to be more tourism, and personally, that can be a negative or a pro depending on what you're doing, right? But Orlando clearly is going to have more people coming and going from the city on a yearly basis, and that could really affect your peace of mind, right? But at the same time, Orlando, you can still find, areas like where I chose to build my home, tucked away and kind of away from everyone, that the whole craziness that goes on in the tourism thing. And I kind of avoid going to the parks if I don't have to, until my wife drags me with the kids. So understand that obviously both have their good and their bad. Weather seems about the same. Costs are about the same. Housing is cheaper though. Utilities are about the same. So it really comes down to, are you trying to just save more money in your overall housing cost? Or are you really just moving to Gainesville because that's just the perfect location for you? I will tell you, but what's interesting is people are concerned, like the medical field and the tech field. The client I had was actually related to, a tech company that repairs, medical equipment. So understand that there are still substantially high-paying jobs in Gainesville. So don't discredit it because of its location. That, like I say, Orlando's like a tech city. It doesn't mean Gainesville isn't. Gainesville still has a lot going for it, a lot of job opportunities. And like I said, it all comes down to what field you're in, what you're trying to do. Because overall, Gainesville is interesting because it can be cheaper, and you could find amazingly priced jobs and stuff to give you your more bang for your buck, without a doubt. Especially if you have a job it doesn't matter where you live, and it's like not location dependent. So I hope you got value in this video. I hope it gave you good insight. If you are trying to decide between both locations, or you are looking to make the move to Orlando, I'd love to have a conversation with you to kind of create that plan to see what would it look like if you move to Orlando, or maybe you're coming tomorrow and you need that action right now. But this number popping up below is how you can get a hold of me. Call, text, email. You're reaching out to me. I'm happy to have that conversation to kind of create that plan, walk through what we can do. We are now heading into 2023. So now is the time to start making those plans, start getting an idea of what would it cost you to move, where would you be looking at moving, and kind of running through everything so you can have a solid plan when it comes to moving to Orlando. So I hope you got value in this video. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.